Hi everybody. Today on the cutting board is an iconic military knife, AK series bayonet. I'll be getting into its origins, practicality, features, visible and hidden, and a little bit of history. I will cover most of the variants of this bayonet and demonstrate some of the ways that they were used. The progenitors of AK bayonet are these other two iconic military knives, a Gewehr 98 or Karabiner 98, K98 German bayonet, and US-made USMC fighting knife or K-bar. I will get into why and demonstrate to you in a little bit here. What you see here is the iconic K98 bayonet produced between World War I and World War II, and somewhat less well-known SVT-40 Soviet bayonet. SVT-40 is a semi-automatic rifle that was developed in the mid-30s and issued to the Soviet military in 1938, and then an updated version of it in 1940. And it came with this bayonet here. This is an early production bayonet, as evidenced by this sheath that closely resembles that of the K98. And also this has edge-up configuration of the blade, which later in the war was replaced. So you can see how the Soviets during war production, they simplified and modernized the shape of the sheath, and from rolled and welded metal, it has a seam on one of these sides. This became rolled and stamped and tack welded method. As you can see here, it's also made out of lighter material. It's steel, but lighter material. And the blade became shorter by about 3/8 of an inch. And no, it's not some troop resharpening bayonet that shortened it. If I take the original longer bayonet and put it in this sheath, as you can see, it's too long by about the same amount. So this was shortened, and the cutting edge moved from the top of the blade to the bottom as it's mounted on the rifle. Right, so this was produced till about mid to late 1944, when the production of the SVT-40 rifles ceased, and so that the factories could tool up for production of the SKS-45 carabiner. So SKS-45 came with this a fixed bayonet. It's non-detachable, and it swivels in and out of the way. The soldiers were trained to shoot the rifle and sight it in with the bayonet in a deployed position. And as you can see, it closely resembles in size and shape that of the SVT-40. The sharper side of this blade is on the bottom side, just like this bayonet here. The material changed, though, from pretty good carbon steel to much softer yet tougher stainless steel. And it's very stainless. It literally doesn't rust no matter what you do to it. On the negative side, the stainless steel is not good at edge retention. It's nearly impossible to sharpen it keenly, and this particular example has never been sharpened. Now, fast forward from 1945 to 1947, and a young talented designer introduces a assault rifle called AK-47. And what you see here is the one and only true AK-47. All the later generation rifles had different designations. So you can see this is a milled receiver, and it does not have bayonet. Concurrently with the release of AK-47, a new bayonet for it was released as well. And you can see that it closely resembles that of the SKS and by extension SVT-40, roughly the same shape. For whatever reason, the sharpen edge moved back upward position from downward, but other than that, it's a very similar bayonet. And the sheath for it is basically a smaller copy of the SVT-40 late production sheath. So the way the bayonet attaches is very different, however, because it just slides over and gets pushed in. So to remove it, you have to pull this lug and it slides out. As time progressed, the Soviets were concerned with some of the complexities in maintaining the milled receivers and field servicing them. Also, the weight was higher than intended. So they continued to perfect metal stamping techniques required to fabricate the rifle, and sometime in the mid-60s, the rifle that they designated AKM, or Автомат Kalashnikova Modernizirованный, they released this new rifle, and the original bayonet for that rifle was shaped, it starts to take a familiar form. That's the bayonet. It's a big departure from the previous shape of SVT-40 and SKS bayonet that was transferred to the AK-47. And that's where the resemblance with the USMC K-bar fighting knife cannot be overlooked. I don't know why did Soviets settle on this shape. It's not very traditional. There's no Bowie knife culture in Soviet Union. But I do know that not only Mikhail Kalashnikov, but some of his colleagues were participating in research and analysis and test of American firearms and other weapons during World War II. And for example, it's a known fact that Mikhail Kalashnikov participated in the evaluation of M1 Garand rifle and might have borrowed some of the rotating bolt principles from there. But anyway, so this shape was selected. It closely resembles USMC fighting knife. The dimension of the blade, the length is a little smaller, and it's narrow, and it's a little bit narrower. But if you put the two together, you can see that overall length is nearly identical, and definitely there is a kinship between these two. So AKM receives this recoil control, or muzzle climb control muzzle device, and that necessitated updating the bayonet design. So they went from this to this, and this will not fit unless I replace it with a barrel nut, and then it will fit. The sheath has to be removed in order to affix the bayonet. The sheath can then be replaced, but it will only go part of the way. So this is how bayonet is affixed to the rifle. You can see a button here that releases it from the tabs. Again, this bayonet is nearly new, so it's a little tight. They loosen up with time. So that's how it works on a AKM rifle. I'll be talking about this one mostly. Both bayonets are electrically protected, and both are equipped with the wire cutters. These wire cutters are quite effective, and let me demonstrate. I have a piece of steel wire here, so I would place my bayonet on the wire and compress it like so. You have to watch where your fingers go. Don't get stuck between here. It will hurt, I assure you. But as you can see, it cuts pretty heavy gauge wire effectively. Just to head off some of the comments, this is the only correct way to attach the two pieces together. It will not work. There might be some other bayonets out there that work that way, but right here it prevents it from being assembled. And if you were to assemble it in a wrong configuration like this way, it wouldn't cut. And if you attach it like this, it won't fit. So the only correct way is to use this straight edge. It's not 90 degrees, there's a slight angle to it. So basically these two pieces are sharpened like metal scissors or metal shears, and that's how it works. So both of these bayonets can be used as an axe by gripping like so, giving it a swing. It works. Another way to use it is as a hammer. You can hammer a nail if you're in a pinch. Like I mentioned before, they're dielectric or insulating, so you can boldly cut wires. This piece here that is part of the lanyard. Let me talk about the lanyard for a second. Why is it here? It's not useful in a fight, and this piece easily comes off, so I wouldn't rely on it too much. So it's here for the sole purpose of when you are getting ready to use the bayonet as a combat knife and you need to crawl, you can still use your hand for crawling and you're not losing your knife. It's also helpful when you use it as an ice pick. The real purpose of this is if you disconnect it here, the troops were frequently issued with a lanyard. You could easily obtain this. It's about 1 meter long leather or cordage lanyard with a small carabiner on the end, and just about everybody had one of these. So you would attach it like this, and this end of the lanyard attaches to your belt. And now if you are climbing a tree or climbing up the mountain, when you need to let go of the bayonet, you'll just hang there, you won't lose it. So a useful device. This edge can be used as a flathead screwdriver if you need to tighten some flatheads that loosened up. That's a neat little tool. My most favorite feature of this bayonet is hidden in the sheath. This is a retention spring that I'm pulling out, and it's designed to be pulled out for cleaning and lubricating, and it can go back this way easily, and now it can easily be stood up on a flat surface. Why would you need to do that? If you have a need to solder two pieces of wire or connect two pieces of paracord, or you need light or heat in some kind of hide, you can attach, for example, a oil-soaked wick to this, clamp it like so, and then if you light it on fire, as I'm demonstrating here, hopefully it's burning. It will produce light and heat, or you can use it as a third hand when you're attaching two pieces of paracord or soldering. I've seen comm guys use this as a third hand to solder some electric wire. So a very neat feature. You can also burn, if you have oil soaked wick, you can use it as a torch, carry it as a torch through some tunnel or something. That's my favorite hidden feature for this generation of the AK bayonet. Another thing, you see how the sheath is shaped with a curve, distinct curve here. It sort of mimics the curve of the blade, and so most people assume that that's how you're supposed to insert the blade, which is not the case. You can actually insert blade any way you want, because the interior of this sheath is rectangular. This metal piece just fitted in there, and you can see the blade doesn't even reach it. So it's not hollow. You can insert it any way you want. In the mid-70s, a new rifle was being issued to the Soviet troops, and it was designated AK-74. And it was basically a rifle very similar to AKM. However, it was tooled for, or chambered in a much smaller cartridge, which it went from 7.62 by 39 to 5.45 by 39 in millimeters. But what they did do, they retained the bayonet attachment system, because they had so many of these produced, they did not want to have to change it. And to do so, they have two bayonet lugs, and it confuses a lot of people. So I'm going to try to do my best to explain. As you can see, this distance here from the tab to the barrel ring is the same for these two tabs. So why do they have a additional tab? So originally was so that they share this component, this gas diverting, gas chamber, gas diverting tube was retained between the two models. In the early AK-74 had basically the gas tube from the AKM. But later they changed and they retained this extra bayonet, what looks like a bayonet lug, but they actually use it for underbarrel grenade launcher attachment, hard point. So that's why it's retained there. Anyway, I digress. So AK-74 was issued originally with this bayonet, and all the way in the late 80s when I was in service, that's the bayonet I had. Then, when they changed from wooden hardware on these AK-74s to a plastic hardware, they started, around the same time, they started issuing a modernized version of AKM bayonet. And how do I say it politely? It was a piece of shit. Here it is. Everyone who got one of these hated it. The reason is they deleted some of the useful features this bayonet had. For example, that hammer was essential to us because our jack boots needed to be re-heeled, which you had to use nails. Good luck finding a hammer when 30, 40 other guys want to attach fresh heels to their boots before inspection. So that was a useful feature. They deleted it from here. It went back to plastic. So instead of Bakelight, which is like basically most akin to micarta today, or something similar, G10, because it's fibers. In this case, it's I think they're wood and or glass fibers mixed with resin. This is just an injection molded polyamide of some sort. They retain the wire cutting capability. They deleted the hammer. They made the blade lighter. That makes it a terrible axe. And you can see they changed the shape from Bowie knife to more of a stiletto style. That potentially made the tip a little stronger because it's an asymmetric grind, but this edge is still impossible to sharpen, and it's still made out of the same very soft, and by soft I mean it's tough, so if you bend it, you can straighten it out, it won't crack, but it won't hold the edge, and yet it's very stainless. So this my favorite feature also changed, so now it became even less useful. Anyway, not a big fan. The only positive thing I can say about this change is this knife here, this bayonet, is almost 100 grams lighter, 3 ounces lighter than this guy. So the original AKM bayonet weighs 11¼ ounces, and the new one weighs 8⅛ ounce. And let's see, with the sheath and everything attached, the overall weight is, it's touching here, the overall weight is 13.6 ounces. And for my favorite guy is, sorry, fumbling for speed here. 16½ ounces. So significant weight reduction. That's the only good thing about it. Troops hated it. It has no utility. Another variation of AK bayonet is the Chinese, I believe that's called Type 56 bayonet. I can't be 100% sure. It's maybe Type 86. Not an expert on Chinese weapons, but you can see that everybody thinks, oh, Chinese bayonet is shorter. Well, it looks shorter when it's sheathed because they deleted the wire cutters. And the reason they deleted the wire cutters, all their rifles had a muzzle device with a little semicircular cutouts that you could place on a barbed wire and pull the trigger, boom, bullet cuts wire. Greatest idea when you're trying to be clandestine, but I'm sure they have wire cutters for that. So they deleted it from the production bayonets, but the blade length and overall shape is the same. You can see the blade length is as identical as two items can be made on a different continent. Anyway, so what else they deleted? They deleted this branch saw, which I didn't talk about. This completely useless feature, and I totally agree with Chinese designers. I was never able to cut anything with this saw. What I was suffering from is having to clean every little serration with a little toothpick before every inspection, because God forbid they found some grease or dirt in the serrations. You would be cleaning latrines for the rest of the year. Anyway, this still has like a hammer head grip here. It also had this lanyard attachment. I don't have the original Chinese. And it attaches, it will fit all Soviet AK rifles. That pretty much covers, completes the story. I'm not sure what they're issuing today. I'm sure it's not as good. This is like an optimal multi-tool, great fidgeter for a board sold. So this is, in a nutshell, the story of a Soviet detachable bayonet. To wrap it up, I'm going to do the usual YouTube thing and ask you to like and subscribe. And if you do, you will not miss the next installment of the cutting board. One of the near future installments, I'll be showing these unusual and rare Soviet Special Forces knives.